once you've finished writing your assignment, it can be really tempting to simply submit it so you don't need to think about it anymore. However, many valuable marks can often be lost by not paying sufficient attention to detail by properly editing and proofreading your work. It's important, therefore, to factor this crucial step into the time you've allocated to undertake your assignment task. So to help you with this, here are 5 tips to remember when proofreading and editing your work. Tip 1. Print a hard copy of your assignment and read it out loud. It's easy to lose track of how our sentences sound when you've been reading them over and over again from the screen. We also tend to skim read once we've read our work a number of times. We know what we wanted to say in our sentences, so our mind tends to fill in the gaps. That's why it's really important to print a hard copy of your assignment and read it out loud during the editing and proofreading stage. By doing this, you're going to be able to hear problems that your eyes can no longer see. Now pay attention when you're doing this. If something appears off to you, go in and investigate to see what's going on. If it bothers you, it's more than likely going to bother the person marking your paper. Here are a couple of other tips for you to remember. Before you undertake this process, leave it for a day or so and then proofread your draft with a fresh set of eyes. Also, before printing your draft, pick up any obvious typing or spelling errors by running a spelling and grammar check. Now, before you do this, make sure that you've set your spell checker to English Australia so that you're using Australian spelling conventions. And finally, if you need to take a breath in the middle of a sentence that you're reading out loud, the sentence is too long. So look for a way to break the longer sentences into 2 more concise statements. Tip 2. Ensure your words are doing important work in making your argument. Don't say in 3 sentences what you could say in 1, and don't use 14 words when 5 will do. Always try to use concrete and clear language so that you can say what you mean and avoid ambiguity. Also, look out for anywhere where you may have repeated yourself, making a similar or the same statement twice. If so, choose the one that's better worded, or perhaps combine and edit the wording of both. The rule to remember here: say it once and say it well. And finally, always try to use more formal academic types of language in your assignments rather than striking a conversational tone. For example, using a word like says in your assignment would command your attention during the proofreading process. Instead of using a word like says, use a word such as contends or claims, acknowledges or suggests. Tip 3. Colour code your assignment. Assign a different colour to each of the different components or requirements of your assignment task. Now you can use your assignment materials and marking criteria to help guide you with this. Now once you've assigned a colour to the different components of the task, go to your assignment draft and find where you've addressed each of those components and then highlight them in the allocated colour. By doing this, you're going to get a great visual representation of where and in how much detail you've addressed each of the requirements of the assignment task. Colour coding your assignment will help you do 2 important things. Firstly, it will establish whether or not you have addressed the necessary criteria of the assignment in sufficient detail. Sections of your assignment task that are worth more marks should be represented as larger segments of coloured text compared to sections worth fewer marks. And second, colour coding your paper will help you identify if you've missed any of the necessary criteria of the assignment. If you've assigned a certain section of your assignment question the colour blue, but you see that after undertaking the colour coding process that no part of your assignment draft is highlighted blue, then this tells you that you've missed addressing this aspect of the question. Tip 4. Beware of using words and phrases that are pretentious or use jargon. We sometimes try to puff up our sentences to try to sound a little bit more sophisticated or authoritative. Oftentimes though, it just ends up looking like we're trying to sound smart. If you find yourself trying to use words and phrases because you think they'll look impressive, think again. If your ideas are good enough, you shouldn't need to strain to find impressive language. The big takeaway tip here: use your thesaurus with care. Tip 5. Be tough on your most dazzling sentences. Now, during the revision process, you'll often come across a sentence or two from a previous draft that no longer belongs. These can often be your favourite sentences. Now, we're all guilty of trying to find ways to still incorporate those sentences into the latest draft, simply because we can't bear to cut them. You need to be ruthless, however, and know when information you've included is no longer relevant or necessary. Then you need to cut it. Remember, by leaving a little bit of time between the writing and the editing process, it makes editing work you're protective of a little bit easier. Here are some other tips to remember when proofreading and editing. Proofread for one problem at a time so that you're not splitting your focus. For example, read through once looking for repetition, then do a read through focusing on sentence structure, then grammar, punctuation, spelling, and so on. Another tip is to always double check any facts and figures that you've included to ensure that they're accurate. Also, watch out for homonyms. Now, these are words with the same pronunciation but a different spelling and meaning. Make sure you're using the right word to represent what you mean to say. Another tip is to remember that you should avoid using contractions in your assignments. So instead of writing don't, won't, or doesn't, write do not, will not, or does not. And finally, always take the time to check your punctuation, spelling, and grammar. At the university level, you should not be submitting an assignment that has obvious spelling and punctuation errors. So next time you've finished writing an assignment, don't be tempted to simply hand it in and be done with it. Take the time to polish your writing and pay attention to detail by properly proofreading and editing your work. It's a great habit to get into early.